When you do a deep survey into the myths from around the world, you actually find that there are two different flood narratives that happened. And so in the very first flood narrative, it talks about a dark world or a beginning and the end of an age. And then there's this cataclysm and this flood occurs and the individual escapes the flood with the 7 sages, the 7 Abigails. And then after that, it is the beginning of this golden age and this new period of time. With the Noah flood, there's civilization that is occurring, and the flood happens because they are trying to wipe out the wickedness from on the planet, you know, like you find in the biblical narrative. And Noah survives the flood, and there's no mention of these 7 sages or 7 Abigails.
So in South America, we have the tradition of Viracocha, who is a builder god that suddenly shows up mysteriously after a global flood wiped everything out. And he appears in specific locations with a group of 7 specialists. They're experts in their fields, because wherever civilization appears on the face of the earth after the flood, and is always one charismatic leader who leads 7 craftspeople, experts in their field.
Throughout the ages, in mythology and spiritual traditions, there are several common themes that keep repeating. But the ancient cycles encoded in nature, as well as embedded in myth, remind us that if we are to survive on this planet, we must be prepared to change and adapt.
There are common themes that run through all of these stories. One of those themes is that civilization is cyclic rather than linear, that there have been previous cycles of civilization that have lasted for approximately 5,000 years. Something happens, those cycles come to an end, a new cycle begins. This is where it gets really interesting, because even though the cycles change, there appears to be a continuity of knowledge, a continuity of wisdom when it comes to the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next. The Mayans divided one precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000 year cycle approximately, into 5,125 year long cycles. Each of those cycles, when they begin, something happens to the civilization during that time. And one of the questions that historians have asked is, could there be something that drives these cycles? Is there a cosmological phenomenon? Is there a climactic phenomenon? Is there a geologic phenomenon? Maybe it's a convergence of all of these phenomena. Something happens every 5,125 years. Well, if we take the year 2012 as the end of one 5,125 year long cycle, and we go back in time to the 5,000 years previously, this would be the time that we traditionally have been taught that civilization began, 5,500 years ago. Now, new discoveries are revealing the remnants of ancient civilizations that predate that 5,000 years many, many times.
One of the things that's echoed in the ancient stories around the world, whether it's Plato talking about Atlantis, or the ancient Egyptians in the Temple of Sais, is that we find that they discuss how these events have come in many different ways. They discuss how the civilizations have been destroyed from periods of great flooding, but also extreme heat and fire. So it's not just about one thing, it's about a totality of all of these different catastrophic events that have led to the disappearance and destruction of these pre-Diluvian civilizations. And the way that we have the telltale evidence is that a lot of these ancient megalithic structures from the pre-Diluvian civilizations that left behind is that we find what's known as vitrification on the surface, whether or not it's Egypt or Peru or Turkey. And what that means is that those granite blocks and the quartz that was in them literally melted from such an extreme heat event that in order to do that, you have to have temperatures on the surface that would have exceeded 2,000 degrees.
Researchers and mythological heroes on a journey have long looked to the sky for answers to explain what happened in the past. But most spiritual traditions and mythical journeys carry core messages that inspire us to also go within to find our answers. Starting in the early 20th century, scientists have been studying ice core samples from the polar regions of the planet. From 1989 to 1995, the Greenland Ice Core Project conducted experiments to understand the climate patterns in that area for approximately the past 100,000 years. Again, in 1998, the collaborative ice drilling project at the Russian Vostok Station in East Antarctica uncovered the deepest ice core ever recorded, revealing climate data for approximately the past 420,000 years. Then, in 2017, an ice core taken from the Blue Ice Field in the Allen Hills of Antarctica revealed ice dating to roughly 2.7 million years old. These studies provide geologists with a clear understanding of the cyclical nature of Earth's climate and weather patterns. Geologists refer to the past and current epochs as the Pleistocene and the Holocene.
The Pleistocene epoch began about 2.8 million years ago, and this is the sheets of ice that we often talk about, covered North America, Greenland, Northern Europe. That period, that epoch, ended about 11,500 years ago as we began the current epoch that we're in now, which is called the Holocene. However, when we go from one epoch to another, it's not a clean break. There's a transition period, there's a buffer between the two, and that buffer is the mystery that helps us to understand what happened in these ancient civilizations. Between 12,800 years ago and 11,600 years ago, that little window of time is an extraordinary period of time that geologists call the Younger Dryas. There are plant species that only exist in cold. One of those plants is called the Dryas, and this is where the term the Younger Dryas comes from. There is evidence of the Younger Dryas far down into North America and down into Northern Europe, suggesting that these were cold temperatures during this period of time, and when the temperatures began to warm, the plants disappear from that period of time. In the late Pleistocene, the time of the Ice Age peaked about 20,000 years before present, and the temperatures began to warm. The warming melted the ice. Then something happened that is a mystery to this day. The warming stopped, and all of a sudden, the temperatures dropped. They plunged about 5 degrees Celsius over the entire northern hemisphere. And in that shift, the temperatures plunged for a period of time, about 1,200 years.
There are many theories around what caused these drastic climate changes of the Younger Dryas period. One of the prevailing theories is named the Clovis Comet Hypothesis, claiming that fragments of a large asteroid or comet struck the planet. Another theory involves a cataclysmic event in our solar system. Currently, between Mars and Jupiter is what is referred to as the asteroid belt. Throughout antiquity, numerous astronomers and researchers have speculated that this is a result of a previously existing planet that was destroyed. In the ancient Babylonian cuneiform text, the Enuma Elish, this watery planet, described as being similar to Earth, is referred to as Tiamat. Throughout history, this mysterious planet has been given other names, such as Planet V, Phaeton, Muldek, and Mulj. If there was a planet that was destroyed, could some of the debris from that massive explosion have fallen to Earth, creating massive changes to the balance of our planet?
Recent evidence has revealed that Earth was hit multiple times during this period of time with something from the cosmos. It is believed to be a comet for this reason. If it were an asteroid, the asteroid would have a single impact that would be more localized. But what we're finding is that whatever it was that was coming into Earth's atmosphere was fragmented, and it broke up and scattered across multiple continents at the same time. The mineral platinum, for example, is relatively rare on Earth, but you find it in comets. As far south as South Africa, there are remnants, fragments of platinum from this comet breakup that match those that are found in Northern Europe. A large crater has been found in Greenland for precisely the same time. So when we look at the theories of what triggered the Younger Dryas, it may be that the impact of the comet and the heat generated by that impact, thousands and thousands of degrees, created a rapid melt to cool the water in the North Atlantic.
One of the things we find is that ocean levels dramatically rose from before the pre-Diluvian period of 13,000 years ago. And we know that looking at geologic and climatological records, whether or not it's ice cores or looking at geologic evidence. What we find is that during this time period, we had glaciation in North America and in Europe, where we had massive ice caps. So when we combine cataclysmic events in our solar system, as mentioned in the Enuma-Elish, with massive amounts of rain, as well as melting of the ice caps, all that water flooded into the ocean, raising sea levels up to 400 feet, flooding and submerging ancient cities and structures around the world.
The Atlantic Ocean is home to the global conveyor belt. Starting from the surface water around the North Pole, this circulation system pulls water from the North Pole and cycles it all throughout the planet.
So when we're looking at the mystery of the Younger Dryas, what we know for certain is that there was a dilution of fresh water and cold water that changed the thermohaline properties of the ocean conveyor of the Atlantic. We know that because of the proxies and the temperature. The mystery is what single factor or what multiple factors may have contributed to that cooling.